it's absolutely strategic. So there's obviously the regulatory risk-based side of it. And what you're talking about is a really thorough long-term approach to it, which is, I think, exactly the right way to deal with it, because it's just the rules have changed. So you have to work to the rules, and you have to work to them in an optimal manner for your organization to give your organization the advantages and help your organization be as successful as it can be. But I think there'll be secondary factors that come out on the more strategic side. So obviously, companies need to have got on top of the legislation, make sure that they've got the processes in place to do things properly, to be able to engage workers in a compliant manner, whether it's inside or outside, just have the processes in place to be able to do it. But I also think that some organizations, maybe more than others, are going to find that because of some of the fallout of IR35, now that we're getting to this point in time, I think some project work is going to start falling behind. Some stuff that people thought was going to be done isn't going to be done, because in particular organizations, they've maybe lost a large number of contractors, or they've made blanket decisions. That is going to have effects that have lagged, and everyone's been worried about the initial problem. But I think those sort of things are going to start coming out more now, and they're just going to think, how are we going to resource those? Yes. And that's where they need to have the access to other options, if that is the best channel to get that piece of work done. But also talent shortages, massive talent shortages. Brexit's made that even harder. So it's about, when it comes to getting work done, we have to be pragmatic, and that means being able to take advantage of all available options that you have, that you can bring to bear.
Agree. I think you've got to be pragmatic, for sure, aware of the arrangement that you are entering yourselves, into, both in terms of the commercial aspect of that and the risk element as well. But I also think that the way that, if you're entering a really long-term arrangement, then it's more difficult to be agile and change direction. But actually, if you're not 100% sure, I think it's fine to arrange a short-term piece of work or a short-term engagement to effectively scope out what the problem might be. We, certainly in previous lives, we've had a tendency to say, well, we need to engage on this particular basis, and we'll do it for 12 months or 18 months because we think that's how long we need. Well, actually, if we need 3 months initially to be able to just set ourselves up for success and work out whether that is the right contracting mechanism, or maybe it isn't. Perhaps we've got a team of skilled permanent colleagues over here that could do the work. They just need a little bit of a leg up. That's fine too. So these engagements don't necessarily need to be forever, and we need to be much more fluid about admitting when we've maybe entered into an engagement that isn't as we expected it to be, for whatever reason, and end that as needed.
Yeah, and I think just business in general is more iterative now. Obviously in the tech space, the idea of working on progressive sprints is very commonly used in the agile methodology. So I do think that, and you'll sometimes see that in the way that a statement of work is structured, in the sense that there'll be an initial output or initial outcomes which will lead to potentially further requirements, which may be with the same supplier, maybe with a different supplier, but you don't necessarily know that straight away. Going back to one thing, which is the point I found fascinating when you're talking about capacity and capability, or capability and capacity. I was having a conversation the other day with a guy called Tom Evely. He's a really interesting guy. And he was talking about, for example, shipping companies, rather than buying an engine from Rolls-Royce, actually engaging with Rolls-Royce on a power by the hour basis, whereby effectively Rolls-Royce are monitoring, or Rolls-Royce, or whoever the engine manufacturer is, monitoring this giant engine in a tanker distribution ship, and monitoring when it needs to be changed, when it needs to be serviced, and they're effectively providing a service that takes that boat from point A to point B. And it's kind of this, he referred to it as servitization. So putting things into a service and putting things into deliverables or an outcome, because you could look at it and go, it's difficult for companies to do this, and there's more to think about for a buying manager. How do they line up the actual deliverables that they need? But statement of work's actually been around for a long, long time. But it's maybe been more, and comes on to an interesting point that we want to get into in a bit, around bringing people in procurement together. It's more the world of procurement, but it's straying more across both now because the workforce channels are all coming together and they're having to be managed in a more holistic way. But you know, for some hiring managers, for example, it's hard enough writing a job spec. So to write a real statement of work or scope of work requirement, for some people it might actually be easier because writing a job spec's a bit more people-y, and they might be more geared towards these are the key objectives that my department or my division have got, and this is a piece of work that needs to be done. But it's an area that's kind of it's not new, but it's rapidly evolving, and the skill set's starting to sit in different places. But I think procurement can play a really active and effective role in helping with that, because they might not be subject matter expert on the particular skill area. I always use cybersecurity because that contains lots of confusing skill areas. But they can help the buying manager ensure that they're using the correct type of structure. And okay, so you're outlining these deliverables. Can you measure that? How will you measure that? How will you know if the job's been done correctly? I do think it's something that people are starting to skill themselves up on, but it might seem scary to organizations initially, but it's an essential part of the mix. So people have got to get on top of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think procurement can definitely play a role in helping us be really mindful about, to your point, the work that needs to get done and what success would look like, what good would look like if it was done in a certain way. You know, and it does require a cultural shift. So leaders in organizations can find it difficult to think about the work rather than, or the skill. They tend to think about the individual. So actually it's, you know, you're designing a role description because you think Johnny would be brilliant in this role because, you know, he's been identified as top talent, he's had really good performance reviews, and actually Johnny is ready for his next step. But is that job Johnny's natural skill set? Is it something that he could do with ease? Is it something that we could upskill him and train him to do? And actually, is it something that he would want to do? So there's some of the things that we're really starting to embed in our organisation, that we absolutely need to think about the individual's aspirations, their skills, their transferable skills and their passions. But more importantly, and before that, we need to think about what the organisation requirement is, what the skill set is that we need to create, be that technical or behavioural, and what good would look like in terms of the output of the work that, you know, we're expecting to get done. And if we focus on that first, then the second piece becomes, okay, great, and what is the right way to source that? It might be this permanent colleague that you had your eye on anyway, because yes, all of the criteria that we've just set out matches this individual perfectly, or it might not be. It might point us into a different direction around sourcing things differently. And, you know, the procurement approach is definitely something that I think the people team can learn a lot from.